Did you ever notice how the most powerful kind of control never looks like control at all? It doesn't shout, it doesn't threaten, it simply pulls away and makes you chase what's leaving. She doesn't have to demand your attention, she just withholds hers, and suddenly your mind starts racing. Did I do something wrong? You replay every text, every tone, every look, searching for the moment the warmth vanished. That's the quiet genius of feminine energy in today's world. It's not physical dominance, it's emotional gravity. And once you've felt it, once you've been pulled into its orbit, it becomes almost impossible to think clearly again. You'll tell yourself she's just different, that she's not manipulating you, she's just emotional. But deep down, you know it's something else. It's not her tears that control you, it's the silence after them. See, most men today think power means being louder, stronger, more assertive. But women learned a long time ago that power isn't about force, it's about response. If she can make you react, she owns the frame. She doesn't have to control you directly, she just controls what you fear losing. A text left unanswered, a look that lingers for 1 second too long, a sudden shift from affection to distance. It's not an accident, it's instinct, centuries of social and emotional conditioning refined into subtle art. You'll sit in your car staring at your phone, rewriting your reply 5 times, just to sound right. You'll feel that strange panic when she grows quiet, like the air itself gets heavier. And without realizing it, you'll adjust yourself around her mood, her tone, her approval. That's not love, that's emotional compliance, and millions of men are living inside that dynamic right now, mistaking obedience for connection, because this isn't a battle between man and woman, it's a silent game between attention and control, and most men don't even know they're playing. Section 2. The nature of feminine energy. Before you ever felt manipulated, you were enchanted, because that's how it starts, not with control, but with connection. She didn't have to ask for your attention. You gave it, willingly, gratefully. There's something magnetic about feminine energy. It's soft, emotional, nurturing, but also deeply powerful. When she looks at you with warmth in her eyes, it feels like being seen for the first time, like you've been living in grayscale, and suddenly someone turned the world back to color. That's the natural form of feminine energy, receptive and radiant. It draws things in, it doesn't chase, it attracts. And the truth is, every man wants to be near that, to feel that calm, that grace, that mystery. But over time, something changes. That same energy that once felt healing begins to take on a different shape, because modern relationships aren't built in balance anymore. They're built in power dynamics. And when connection turns into leverage, that warmth becomes a weapon. She learns, not from malice, but from experience, that her emotional state can move you, her sadness can bend your will, her silence can shift your choices, her disappointment can make you apologize for things you didn't even do. And just like that, what began as love becomes a form of emotional currency. You feel it, but can't name it. You start walking carefully around her moods, not to upset her, but to avoid that cold, distant energy that feels like punishment. It's a quiet transaction now. She gives affection when you please her. She withdraws it when you don't. And you chase the warmth that used to be free. Feminine energy, when imbalanced, doesn't destroy through confrontation. It destroys through influence. It doesn't say, do this. It just makes you want to do it. That's the difference between love and manipulation. One inspires, the other controls. And yet she may not even realize she's doing it. Because this isn't about evil, it's about instinct. Feminine energy adapts to survive. And in a world where validation is the new power, emotion has become the sharpest weapon. Section 3. The birth of manipulation. No woman wakes up one day and decides to manipulate men. It doesn't happen that way. It's something the world teaches her, slowly, quietly, and with rewards. When she's young, she learns that her emotions have power, that when she cries, people listen. When she pouts, things change. When she pulls away, someone always comes closer. At first, it's innocent. It's not manipulation, it's survival. Feminine energy learns early that softness is influence, and influence gets results. The more she uses it, the more the world reinforces it. Then comes the digital age, validation, attention, instant gratification. Now, her emotional energy isn't just power within relationships, it's currency. Every reaction, every compliment, every desperate text becomes proof of worth, and the more men respond, the more the system rewards her. She doesn't even need to be cruel, all she has to do is withdraw, because silence now is louder than shouting. Distance hurts more than anger. The truth is, modern culture built this pattern for her. It taught her that attention equals love, and that withholding it equals control. Every influencer, every romantic drama, every feminine empowerment message subtly repeats the same lesson. Don't chase, make him chase you. Don't give too much, make him earn you. Don't show emotion, use emotion. It's a game no one admits exists, but everyone plays, and while she's praised for mastering it, men are condemned for reacting to it. She becomes the prize, and he becomes the performer. But the cruelest part? Most women don't even know how deeply this conditioning runs. It's not conscious malice, it's unconscious mastery. And once it starts working, it's hard to stop, because why would she? Why give up the one power the world never took from her? When men no longer lead emotionally, the only form of control left is subtle, and in subtlety she becomes untouchable. That's the birth of manipulation, not hatred, not strategy, just instinct meeting opportunity. It's the moment love turns into leverage, and most men never even notice the shift, because they're too busy chasing the warmth that's already being used against them. Section 4. How men fall for it. It's easy to judge from the outside, to say he should have known better, but when you're inside it, you don't see it as manipulation, you see it as love. Because men aren't drawn to chaos, they're drawn to peace. And feminine energy, when it's warm, feels like home. It's calming, healing, magnetic. It's what every man who's been hardened by life secretly craves. So when she smiles at him, when she gives that soft attention, that gentle tone, he melts, he lets his guard down. And when she withdraws it, he feels like something sacred was taken away. That's how it starts, not with control, but with comfort. She becomes the center of his emotional weather. When she's happy, he feels safe. When she's distant, he feels broken. He doesn't chase her because he's desperate. He chases her because he wants peace again. Because the feminine has the ability to soothe the masculine, and when that energy turns cold, it hurts more than words ever could. So he adjusts. He apologizes first. He stops expressing needs that might upset her. He works harder to make her smile. Even when he's the one bleeding inside, he thinks he's being kind. He thinks he's being loving. But what he's really doing is abandoning himself. Every time he submits to her moods, every time he softens his truth to keep her calm, he loses a little bit more of his center. And she doesn't even need to ask. Her silence does all the work. Her sighs, her distance, her withdrawal, they train him better than words ever could. Before long, his happiness depends on her emotional approval. He can't relax unless she's at peace. He can't feel confident unless she validates him. He's not leading anymore. He's following, quietly, hoping for affection that never lasts. And this is how most modern men lose their strength. Not in battle, not in rejection, but in emotional obedience disguised as love. Because the truth is, she doesn't even have to control him directly. He does it to himself. All she had to do was teach him what peace costs. Section 5. The emotional addiction. Every addiction begins the same way, with something that feels good. A small rush, a moment of comfort, a taste of peace. You don't notice it's happening until you can't live without it. That's what emotional manipulation does to men. It doesn't break them overnight. It conditions them, drip by drip, until the feminine becomes both their pain and their medicine. When she's warm, it's like the world softens. His thoughts slow down, his body relaxes, he feels safe again. That warmth becomes his dopamine hit, his escape from the noise inside his own mind. But when she pulls away, when she goes quiet, when her tone changes, his peace disappears. He doesn't know why, he just feels wrong, like he's been exiled from the only place that made sense. So he tries to get that feeling back. He texts, he apologizes, he over-explains. He promises to do better, even if he doesn't know what he did. And every time she gives him back just a little warmth, his brain floods with relief. That's the loop. Warmth, withdrawal, panic, reward, repeat. It's not love anymore, it's conditioning. The same part of the brain that gets addicted to substances gets addicted to emotional cycles. The unpredictability, the push and pull, releases dopamine and cortisol in waves. That's why he can't leave. That's why she's not even that nice to him, but he still can't stop thinking about her. Because she doesn't need to be consistent. She just needs to be unpredictable enough to keep him chasing equilibrium. And the cruelest part, he calls it passion. He calls it chemistry. But what he's really describing is dependency. He mistakes anxiety for desire. He confuses peace for relief. And slowly his nervous system rewires itself to crave instability, as long as it's hers. This isn't romance anymore. It's psychological reinforcement. And most men never realize they're addicted because the drug they're hooked on wears perfume and calls itself love. Section 6. The feminine mask of weakness. The smartest kind of power doesn't come from strength. It comes from the illusion of weakness. Because when she cries, when she trembles, when she says, "You don't understand how much you hurt me," it doesn't feel like control. It feels like innocence, like softness, like love. But that's the trick no one talks about. Feminine energy doesn't have to dominate to manipulate. It just has to suffer louder than you do. Every time a man tries to express his frustration, she raises her pain higher. If he's angry, she becomes fragile. If he's quiet, she becomes distant. If he pulls back, she breaks down. And in that moment, he forgets what he was even fighting for. Because men are protectors by nature. They're built to respond to vulnerability, to fix, to comfort, to make things right. So when she plays small, he shrinks too. Not out of fear, but out of guilt. Because no man wants to feel like the villain in the story he was trying to save. He starts holding back his truth. He stops setting boundaries. He starts apologizing just to end the emotional storm. And every time he does, she learns something, that her pain has power. Soon she doesn't need logic. She doesn't need reason. All she has to do is feel, and he'll move mountains to make it stop. It's not always conscious. In most cases, she's not trying to be manipulative. She's just learned the easiest way to win, because society taught her that emotional expression equals moral authority, that if she cries, she's right, and if he stays calm, he's cold, so she becomes untouchable behind her tears. She gets to control without ever looking like the one in control, and the man, the one who just wanted peace, starts believing that love means self-sacrifice, that being a good man means carrying her emotions at the cost of his own. But what he doesn't realize is this: when you protect someone from their own feelings long enough, you teach them to weaponize them. That's not love, that's training. Section 7. The Death of Polarity. Love doesn't die in explosions, it dies in the slow erosion of difference. Because what draws a man and a woman together isn't similarity, it's polarity. It's the magnetic tension between stillness and movement, logic and feeling, strength and surrender. But when the balance breaks, everything falls apart quietly. The man becomes emotional, reactive, uncertain. The woman becomes guarded, directive, cold. And what used to be attraction becomes exhaustion. She stops admiring him, he stops trusting her, and they both start performing love instead of living it. It's not that they don't care anymore, it's that the roles have reversed. He's no longer leading with grounded strength, he's waiting for emotional permission. She's no longer resting in warmth, she's managing the relationship like a job. The polarity that once created desire now feeds resentment. Because no woman can stay attracted to a man, she has to emotionally control, and no man can feel free with a woman who tests him more than she trusts him. That's where manipulation ends up, in the death of chemistry. The tension is still there, but it's no longer romantic, it's psychological. They're bound by guilt, habit, and obligation. He does what keeps her calm, she does what keeps her secure, and the quiet war continues. No shouting, no chaos, just emptiness. It's a perfect balance of unhappiness. The masculine no longer provides direction. The feminine no longer offers softness. They trade places until both energies cancel each other out. She becomes the emotional leader. He becomes the emotional follower. And what's left is a connection that feels like walking on eggshells in your own home. There's no laughter anymore, no spark, just constant emotional management. He measures every word. She measures every reaction. Everything becomes a calculation. That's what happens when love turns into a test. No one wins. They just quietly drift apart. Not in distance, but in energy. And that's the final stage of emotional manipulation. Not heartbreak, not betrayal, but neutrality. When you stop feeling anything at all and mistake that silence for peace. Section 8. Breaking the spell. Every illusion ends the same way. Not with chaos, but with clarity. There's a moment when the noise stops, and you realize the person you've been fighting to please was never holding you captive. You were. That's when the spell breaks. It doesn't happen in an argument. It doesn't happen in a grand goodbye. It happens in silence, when a man finally looks at her and feels nothing. Not hatred, not love, just peace. He sees the game for what it was, a loop of giving and taking, of pleasing and apologizing, all built on one fear, losing her. But now he understands. He can't lose something that was never meant to be kept through submission. He doesn't need her permission to rest. He doesn't need her approval to feel whole. And that realization is what every manipulative dynamic fears most. A man who no longer reacts, because the entire system runs on his energy, his attention. His fear of emotional distance, once he stops feeding it, it collapses. He no longer explains himself endlessly. He no longer apologizes for existing. He simply stands still, calm, grounded, aware. At first she won't understand. She'll provoke. She'll test the silence. She'll try to pull him back into the cycle. But the difference now is subtle. He's not fighting her. He's not chasing or running. He's just not playing. And when a man detaches with awareness instead of anger, the dynamic loses all its power, because love without boundaries becomes servitude, And peace built on fear isn't peace at all, it's control. So he reclaims his energy, piece by piece, breath by breath. He remembers what it felt like to live without tension, to breathe without permission, to give without needing something back. And in that quiet moment, he realizes something no one ever told him. He was never broken. He was just drained by people who mistook his empathy for obedience. That's the spell breaking. Not dramatic, not loud, just the sound of a man finally choosing himself. Section 9, the final truth. At the end of it all, after the silence, the chaos, the control, he realizes the truth that was waiting all along. She never had the power. He gave it to her. Every reaction, every apology, every time he tried to fix what wasn't his to fix, he handed her another piece of his peace. Not because she demanded it, but because he believed love meant surrender, and that's how good men lose themselves. Not through cruelty, but through devotion. Not because they were weak, but because they were hoping. They wanted to believe that if they gave enough, she would stop testing, that if they proved themselves, she would finally rest. But love built on fear isn't love, it's servitude with softer lighting. The truth is, feminine energy was never meant to be obeyed, it was meant to be balanced. She is movement, he is stillness, she is emotion, he is direction. When that harmony breaks, both become lost in their own extremes. And that's what happened to modern love. It turned polarity into power struggle. Men stopped leading, women stopped trusting, and everyone learned to manipulate instead of connect. But awareness changes everything, because the moment a man stops seeking peace through someone else, he finds it within himself. He no longer needs to chase warmth that disappears when tested. He no longer mistakes guilt for love. He no longer flinches when silence enters the room. He just breathes, calmly, fully, freely. He realizes he was never fighting her, he was fighting his own need to be needed. That's the real masculine awakening, not indifference, not isolation, but emotional sovereignty. The ability to feel without being controlled by feeling, to love without losing yourself. And maybe that's the final lesson. Feminine energy can only manipulate the man who doesn't know his own. Once he learns to hold his center, her storms can't move him, her silence can't break him, her approval can't define him. He no longer lives in reaction, he lives in truth. Because the power she seemed to have was never real, it was borrowed, given, freely. And now, he takes it back.